Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for teleSur English. I'm Cody Weddle, and this is From the South. Activists have commemorated the 7th anniversary of the Honduran coup by organizing to fight neoliberal government policies. Plus, British opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn loses a no-confidence vote, but has vowed to fight on. We start off in Istanbul, Turkey, where just hours ago, at least 28 people were killed and dozens wounded. This is breaking news in a pair of suicide attacks at the international airport. All flights there have been put on hold. This is the latest of several bombings in Turkey this year. Bolivia secured a seat on the United Nations Security Council Tuesday after running unopposed. Bolivia will hold the seat for the third time in its history. Ethiopia, Sweden, and Kazakhstan were also elected to that body. The vote over the final non-permanent seats is still too close to call. A recent report by the UN says that millions of Latin Americans could fall back into poverty because of the economic regression affecting most of the region. It warned that up to 30 million citizens are vulnerable. In Bolivia, while the economy is continuing to grow, some sectors of society are struggling to earn a living. Our correspondent in Bolivia now, Dimitri O'Donnell, reports from the capital, La Paz.
A group of Bolivians patiently queue in the bitter cold to get a bed in a temporary housing shelter at the main bus terminal in La Paz. Most nights, hundreds of elderly people and young mothers with children come here after a day working or begging on the streets. They've left their homes in the once prosperous mining town of Potosi because they can no longer feed their families.
They cannot survive in their communities. The land is very dry. They're not producing. They have to find economic opportunities so they can come to the cities.
According to the UN report, between 2015 and 2016, the number of poor people living in the region increased significantly for the first time in decades. The result is increased poverty levels, forcing many poor people from their rural homes in search of work elsewhere. Many end up in shelters like this one because they have nowhere else to go.
In Potosi, we have no work. There's no opportunities. Finding money there is difficult. I can only grow potatoes and crops for a short period. But what am I going to leave after that? That's why I came here to survive.
The UN says 220 million people in Latin America, 38% of the region's population, are now vulnerable, living on less than $10 a day. At this shelter, most of these migrants survive on even less.
The people here earn less than 10 bolivanos a day. That's about $1.50 every day to live on.
Despite a strong Bolivian economy, many people say they've been left behind and the economic slowdown in South America is having an impact.
Poverty is very high here. There is no work, there is no demand or commerce. Now the mining has reduced. We are out in the streets.
The UN says that because Latin America has many unqualified workers, taxes often hit the poorest the hardest. It's urging all Latin American governments to set aside funds to combat poverty and to focus on reducing the gender inequality faced by women. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSur, La Paz.
Today marks the 7th year anniversary of the Honduran coup. In the early hours of June 28, 2009, a military coup ousted democratically elected President Manuel Zelaya, flying him into Costa Rica in exile. Zelaya had planned to hold a non-binding poll on whether to hold a referendum during the upcoming election to convoke a constituent assembly to rewrite the Honduran constitution. 7 years after the U.S.-backed coup, the Central American country's democracy is still in crisis, epitomized perhaps most clearly by the recent murder of internationally renowned environmental leader Berta Cáceres.
Come to this. 6 months earlier, the president of...
To understand the state of things there in Honduras on the 7th anniversary, we turn to our correspondent Gerardo Torres. He's been with members of social organizations who met on Monday to announce that they will begin to work together to fight the government's current political and economic measures that have impoverished the majority of Hondurans.
Members of Via Campesina, the United Federation of Honduran Workers, and the National Resistance Front joined forces on Monday in an attempt to coordinate their different struggles into a single agenda to fight the neoliberal policies being implemented by the government such as the privatization of several state offices and services that have reduced social benefits, decreased workers' rights, increased unemployment, and increased the country's poverty levels.
No podemos seguir movimiento obrero por un lado.
We can't continue to be workers' movements over here and a teachers' movement over there, the campesinos here and the students there, because we are all facing the problem of economic model, of neoliberalism, and we have to face it organized and in the streets.
The announcement was made a day before the 7th anniversary of the 2009 coup d'etat, which unleashed repression and violence on the country's social and community activists.
The situation created in the country that has become worse has to do with repression, to create fear to stop the people from organizing and fighting for their rights. People need to understand that this is a class struggle, and we are seeing the advance of the neoliberal model.
Social movements in Honduras have been constantly attacked since the coup. More than 200 leaders have been murdered. There is a consistent campaign criminalizing social movements in the mainstream media, and individuals have lost their rights and their jobs. On the anniversary of the coup, these movements plan to march together, and they expect to continue under a unified agenda in the months to come. Gerardo Torres, TeleSur, Central America.
Different social sectors in the oil industry union also are celebrating the return of Colombia's biggest oil field, the national oil company Ecopetrol. For decades, the oil field known as Campo Rubiales has been operated by multinational companies. However, the agreement for foreign operation comes to an end this Thursday, and Ecopetrol will retake full control of the Rubiales field. The move has been applauded by the workers as a victory for the struggle in the defense of Colombia's resources. Lawyers of drug cartel kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman have presented 2 appeals to stop his extradition to the U.S. The appeals argue the statute of limitations has run out on some crimes Guzman is accused of committing in the U.S. The appeals were filed late Monday in courts in Mexico City. Rodriguez said Tuesday he predicted it could take as long as 3 years to resolve them. El Chapo faces drug trafficking and other charges from 7 U.S. federal prosecutors. Cuba has successfully held off the Zika epidemic and has all but eliminated dengue fever and other mosquito-borne illnesses. That's according to state-run media on Tuesday. The Cuban government has taken several measures to combat the diseases. The military has helped fumigate, and neighborhood watch groups have ensured there is no standing water where the insects breed. Health checks have also been set up at airports and other entry points to the Caribbean island, among many other measures. Soil is parched in Guatemala. Water level there are running low, and 3 million Guatemalans are in need of food support as drought has ravaged the country. The drought has exacerbated an already tough situation where 60% of the population lives under the poverty line, with only $3.50 a day. European Union leaders gathered for an EU summit focused on the consequences of the British vote to leave the bloc. Now, Britain has been facing calls to act quickly to resolve the political and economic chaos that vote there has left. EU leaders will hold a 27-member meeting on Wednesday without UK Prime Minister David Cameron to discuss Brexit. They will also start talks on reforms needed in the bloc to keep it together. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said she was drawing up legislation for a new independence referendum. Sturgeon said she will meet European Union leaders in Brussels on Wednesday to discuss the possibilities for Scotland to remain in the bloc.
I'm also proudly European.
Britain's opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn vowed to fight to retain control of his party. This after Labour lawmakers voted against him in a vote of no confidence after almost all his policy team resigned. Many of Corbyn's fellow MPs say his efforts against Brexit were insufficient. Volkswagen has agreed to pay out $14.7 billion in a settlement over its emissions cheating diesel-powered cars. The U.S. Justice Department said the money will be paid to U.S. authorities and car owners. The company will either buy back or fix the cars that tricked pollution tests, and each one will have to pay up to $10,000 in cash. Outgoing UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is visiting Israel and the Palestinian territories for the last time before he leaves office in December. For more now, we turn to our correspondent in the region, Noor Harazin.
Outgoing United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon arrived in the Gaza Strip Tuesday morning via the Israeli-controlled Erez crossing on his final trip to Palestine before his term in office expires in December. The UN official, along with 34 delegates, visited a UN building, a prosthetics hospital, and a health project. He also met with UN staff working in Gaza. Speaking at a press conference at the Tel El Hawa neighborhood in southern Gaza City, Moon said that the blockade on Gaza increases the danger of dual hostilities between the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and Israelis.
Today, 70% of people is in need of humanitarian assistance.
اليوم 70% من سكان قطاع غزة يحتاجون إلى مساعدات إنسانية.
And over half of Gaza's young people have little to no jobs, prospects or horizons of hope.
ونصف شباب غزة الآن ليس لديهم وظائف حتى أفق وجود هذه الوظائف غير موجود.
This situation cannot continue.
هذا الوضع لا يمكن له أن يستمر.
It feeds anger and despair.
إنه يولد الغضب واليأس.
It increases the danger of new escalation of hostilities.
Later in the day, Moon met with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and his team in the West Bank city of Ramallah for further discussions over the ongoing peace efforts. The UN chief urged Palestinian and Israeli leaders to take steps toward peace and show responsibility in considering each other's points of view after a meeting with Israeli President Reuven Rivlin on Monday. The last time Moon visited the Gaza Strip was in October 2014 to view destruction from Israel's 50-day attack on Gaza and the Islamic Hamas group. The conflict claimed the lives of 2,200 Palestinians, mostly civilians. Noor Harazin, teleSur's TV, Gaza.
Cristiano Ronaldo joined the rest of the Portugal squad for a training session ahead of their Euro 2016 quarterfinal clash against Poland. The team looked focused as they prepared for their upcoming crucial match there. However, Portugal had not won a game at the tournament before meeting Croatia, registering 3 successive draws in the group stage. A SWAT van spray-painted by elusive street artist Banksy will go under the hammer at the London auction on Wednesday. The estimated sale price is around $400,000. Banksy, who has kept his identity secret, is now working on buildings and displays as well as provocative social commentary. That's what we're covering on this Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. We'll see you back here tomorrow.